if I could record it.
It is recording
Correct.
there now. Okay.
Thanks,
Any
Tom.
questions so far? Are we good to go?
It all sounds good to me. Yeah. Any questions from anyone else? If you've questions, ping them in the chat there, or else.
Okay, so what we're looking to do, again, with athletic development, another way to put it is you've got some people that just run, some people just jump, some people just throw, whatever it is. We've got other people who you consider kind of multi-sport athletes, and I think quite a few of you are competing in a few different events, but even play a couple of different sports as well. And what athletic development does for the people who don't play multiple sports is it kind of fills the gap of what they need. So we're looking at, again, giving, if we look back at that quote, exposing them to a variety of learning opportunities. What runners get from playing rugby or badminton or anything like that is, number one, an appreciation for different sports and different ways of moving, but also a great resilience in the joints, the tissues, the tendons, the muscles, because you're using them in a different way consistently, rather than just, again, digging that narrow, deep groove for yourself. So we're going to look at the general theme going through these. I got a little bit creative. There's different shape in every slide. And that just kind of signifies that when we're looking at running, David Rudisha here, you probably all recognize him. This is the general shape of running. All right, it's very familiar looking. It's very graceful. But when we're training an athlete in general for a lot of different qualities, if all we're looking at is trying to make this shape all the time, then we're becoming pretty fragile and not very resilient to injury. So the type of things that we try to do, while this is a general theme you'll see in athletic development training, it's not the be all and end all, and sometimes we got to make different shapes to make sure that we're a bit more robust. Okay, so if we could move on to the next slide. So my approach with athletes, and this is trial and error, this is learning and failing, this is finding some good things that work and holding on to them. But I suppose the easiest way to kind of to describe what I do with everybody, and that's, I'm using the word athletes here, but this is 80-year-old people coming in with knee replacements. This is 7-year-olds coming in with different issues. It's basic movement patterns through appropriate progressions as relevant to the athlete. And I think if we start at that point with everybody, then the key thing is that we'll do no harm, right? Because we get a lot of the kind of cookie cutter approaches, or when you guys go into university and you join maybe the track team there or the athletics team there, and you get given a weights program, sometimes the problem there is not the actual content of the session, it's just that you're not ready for it, or you need something slightly different, or a previous injury maybe requires you to do other things other than what the rest of the team are doing. So the overarching principle there, looking through that, is do no harm with the people that we're working with. If I injure you in a gym session, then you're not going to be able to run that evening or the following few days. You miss out on an opportunity to get better at your sport, and that's goal number one. I suppose a lot of this comes from, I've had a heavy exposure to PE teachers as mentors, both in Ireland but also across the planet or across the world, and they would always talk about this kind of progression and regression principle, that you can't just assume somebody can do something. You find where they're at and you meet them there, and you build up or build down based on what they need. So the aim or the goal with all of that is what we refer to as physical literacy. So we talk about literacy from what we do learning in school, learning our letters, learning our words, how to make sentences, how to write paragraphs, how to write essays, how to write novels. It's the same thing with these movements. And what we kind of go through with everybody at the start are the ABCs of movement. And we're going to go through those now in two minutes. Usually, in some countries across the world, that's achieved through actual physical education through primary school and secondary school. We're a little bit behind in this country at the moment with regards to the provision of PE in our schools. I know when I was in the tech, it was football thrown between 20 lads and 20 girls, and essentially nothing got done other than the lads kicked the living daylights out of each other and the girls didn't do much, which is a sad state of affairs when we look at male and female sport. We want equal opportunities, we want equal progression, and we want everybody to be able to come through a physical education system armed with the tools to actually perform as an athlete. But our schools certainly didn't provide it when I was going to school. I'm not sure what it's like now, but I doubt it's massively better. So what we're trying to do, I suppose, then with this athletic development approach when we're working with athletes is to replace that or bring that back in so that everybody gets up to a certain level of physical literacy. And the majority of people I see struggle with some very basic things. Crawling, skipping, even the likes of doing a push-up, I think should be something that every person should be able to do, never mind every athlete. And you'd be surprised how many of the little niggly injuries get sorted by just ticking the box on some of the basics. So here are some of the basic movement patterns. So on the left there are kind of the things that you classify as being done in a gym, and on the right, things that you classify being done out in the environment, whether it's at a track, whether it's in a pool, whether it's in a tree or whatever. But I think if we all just take a second to look through each of those, and some of the terms on the left should be pretty familiar, but if you're not sure, don't worry about it. You might get to it later on. But have a look through each of those terms and have a think about, are you competent and confident at doing each of those things? There's one thing there that I can't do. I cannot swim. I am absolutely terrified of water. But that leaves me kind of not fully physically literate from the point of view of a human being. I don't need it for any of the sports that I do or any of the activities I take part in. But if I can't swim, it's taken away from my physical literacy. Is there anybody there that would struggle with something like a simple push-up? Yeah. Is that something that you've never practiced, or is it something that was never taught to you? Strength. And strength is a quality that we're going to talk about as well. And I suppose we're looking at everybody as an individual first and foremost. So with regards to your strength on a push-up, we have to find the appropriate entry point. But a push-up, whether it's done with hands on the floor or whether it's done with hands on the wall or a chair or anything like that, it's still a push-up, and it's still a kind of a basic pattern that we need to achieve. And we're going to have all different levels of strength. Like I teach old men and old women how to do push-ups, teach young kids how to do them, and it's just about finding the entry point. And we want to get some level of kind of competence at each of these. So when we look at kind of general strength sessions or circuits that you might be doing yourselves, squatting and lunging and twisting and bracing are probably the key components of it.
Sorry, I want to share my ignorance here now. I know what brace means, but what does it mean in this context? Bracing
is it's probably what you expect. It's that kind of, you're about to get punched in the stomach. What do? You tense everything as much as you can, and that's going to be an important one when we talk about running later on. Is the ability to brace appropriately, and not just from a point of view of doing a plank and holding for as long as you can, but looking to reduce unwanted movement from a joint.
Okay. I tend to use the running one there in that scenario, but that's good. Like a brace.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then let's say if we look at the right-hand side, those are more the things that we would tend to learn in physical education: running and skipping and climbing and crawling, jumping and landing and swimming. And those are just as important to athletes, even professional athletes, even those that are looking to perform at the highest level, than just the stuff that they're doing in their gym sessions. All right, so basic movement patterns. I think, Sean, you're there, aren't you? Sean Cotter there, he is somewhere, yeah. Yeah, so we went through a session on, was it Wednesday? Yeah. We did squatting, lunging, hinging, we did some pushing, pulling, we did some twisting, we did some bracing. We covered all of those. And it wasn't necessarily a long and very exhausting session, but some of these basics can be done pretty readily, and you can mix and match them together. You can add them up together to create kind of movement problems for people that meet them where they're at. And that's going to be kind of a common theme, getting away from the cookie cutter, everybody needs to do this particular session, and looking more towards, this is the general movement pattern that we're doing. This is the most appropriate pattern for me to work on, or this is the most appropriate variation. So somebody may not be able to do a single leg squat, they'll be doing a double leg squat. Somebody maybe not be able to do a lateral lunge, they'll do a forward lunge. Someone may not be able to do a full push-up, they'll do a push-up on a chair. It's about finding the point where you're struggling a little, but you're still able to achieve the task, is where the most appropriate training comes from. Okay. So the next part of that kind of approach, we had basic movement patterns. and we're looking at appropriate progressions. So there's probably certain people here that would just consider themselves as people who are just stiff, or people who don't have good flexibility. There's people that would consider themselves maybe not that coordinated. There's people that would consider themselves not that strong, not that fast, not that powerful, not that fit. Those are all just qualities of movement, or qualities of a human being. And depending on what somebody needs, or what's the most pressing thing on assessment, will enter at different points of it. So let's say we have somebody like me who, let's say I can't touch my toes, or I can't squat down to parallel. I'm not going to give somebody like me a heavy squat strength workout to work on if they can't do the basic movement in the first place. So when I'm assessing people, and this is kind of the way it should be, and it doesn't take a whole lot of experience to be able to get this right. I'm sure, like all of you coaches, when you see somebody run in a warm-up, you're assessing them. You're seeing, do they look stiff? You're seeing, do they look coordinated? You're seeing, or you're listening to how their foot's hitting the floor. Does it sound fast and powerful? Those are all kind of screening things that we do. And it's the same thing when I watch somebody move, whether it's a squat or a lunge, or whether it's a push-up. You're assessing them along the spectrum. And when we're talking about meeting the person where they're at and giving them the most appropriate challenge, if somebody's lacking in range of motion, you start there. That's primary, especially in developing bodies, kind of the 12 to kind of 22-year-olds. If you don't look after range of motion there, it can be harder and harder to get it back down the line. If we can tick the box on range of motion, the next thing up is, can you control that range of motion? We all know somebody who's hypermobile. There might be some people here that kind of quote unquote double jointed. We've got a lot of range of motion, but you might not be able to control that big range of motion. That's the second thing that we look at. If we have both the range of motion and that control of our joints, then we look at strength, then we look at speed, then we look at power, and then we look at endurance. And for majority of you guys here, I think definitely in this group, I think endurance is the number one quality that you're hunting for future performance. And that might be the thing where a lot of the focus comes onto. But if, again, it's built on a kind of a foundation of poor range of motion and poor control, it can scupper the future with it. And I think that's one of the goals to go through on this talk, is that everybody gets a good appreciation of if they're lacking in something, that they know either how to solve it themselves or who to reach out to help with that. So through appropriate progressions, I suppose the key thing here is we're looking at is reducing injuries. All right, performance will come down the line. But I suppose if we think about it from the point of view of, if we're trying to build a house, we want to build a solid foundation, and the range of motion and the neuromuscular control, and then some aspect of strength is the foundation of that house. And then if you look at the sports that you guys are involved in, it's either a speed sport, a power sport, or an endurance sport. Sprints, throws, jumps, and then your kind of middle distance and distance. And where I kind of work for them in the most part is up at this end, and where the coaches in the room here work at is down at this end. And I suppose it's trying to see how they work hand in hand, and trying to see how they maybe work together a little bit better, or how they could work together a little bit better. Okay, next bit. So relevant to the athlete. And this is one, I suppose, that comes more from the physio side rather than the athletic development side. The training history, the injury history, what part of the season you're at, what sport or sports you're involved in, any lifestyle factors that may be of issue, and then just general health. So I suppose to take an example from Nadia at the moment, Nadia is in her final year in university, and she's working a full 9-to-5 job as part of an internship, and training as a full-time athlete, and not getting any funding, or very little funding. So if we look at that from the point of view of her lifestyle, trying to fit in 1 or 2 runs a day and up to 3 gym sessions per week is quite a difficult challenge for us to be able to figure out. And I have her permission to share all of these little stories. We'll say if anybody, I don't know if you follow times and you follow progressions of people through the season, she got a pretty high profile from winning a bronze medal at the Euro under-23s last year, and has struggled to kick on from that performance this season. And she had a brilliant end to last season where she knocked a couple of seconds off both PBs. But the big difference this year is that she's now working a 9 to 5 job, whereas last season she was in college. And any of you guys who are in college at the moment know that you can do as much work as you want, or you can do as little work as you want. So she was allowed to live as a full-time professional athlete last year, and you saw the effect on her times versus this year having to work full-time. It's been a struggle. Okay, now we're through the other end of that, but lifestyle factors are something that you guys do need to consider with your training, and it has a big effect on how much training you can do, the quality of training you can do, and it can lead to little niggles. It can lead to the development of an injury, and those kind of things need to be considered. If there's anybody that has a struggle with sleep or is working shift work or anything like that, it's important that you discuss that with your coach, because it's something that if it goes unsaid can kind of bite you in the ass down the line. One of the important things to mention here, I suppose, and I'm not going to bore you for too long, we're going to get to questions as soon as we can, but the training history is not just how many mile repeats you've done or how many 10x400s you've done. It's more so along the lines of where are you at from a development point of view. Have you been coached appropriately on basic movements? Have you done well through PE? Have you been coached by a, we'll say, experienced and knowledgeable coach that has actually looked after you? Or have you just been winging it through the whole thing? Because if somebody comes into me and they're talented, and I look back at their training history and they've never been taught how to squat or lunge, they've never been taught how to warm up, they've never been taught how to stretch and look after their mobility or what's the appropriate thing to recover, then that's some of the low-hanging fruit that would need to be looked at first before looking at what sort of weightlifting regime they should be on, or what sort of trackside warm-up should they be doing. If they're not sleeping their 8 hours, then that's the kind of thing that we need to be looking at first. So with regard, I'm kind of selling myself out of a job here. If somebody's coming in and they haven't got all those things ticked off, then I send them out the door and say, come back to me when you're kind of sorted your life out, more or less. Any questions on those three things? So the basic movement patterns, the appropriate progressions, and the relevance to the athlete.
For shift work.
Yeah.
When you're working on, like, I work in a factory myself, so like on that, to get the full, or to get what you need from a session then, or any, like a few weeks of a session, is it sleep and just good healthy recovery? Is that what you need, like sleep to gain from it?
The sleep is the key thing.
Yeah.
We hear all about these kind of like the recovery tights and all of these kind of recovery methods, but like sleep, like the reason we sleep is to recover, is to undo the damage of the previous day. And I suppose with shift work, if it's going on later or you're covering night shifts, one of the problems is the kind of the upset pattern of sleep. So I suppose if you're looking at whether it's a 3-day on, 3-day off type thing, is about having a set pattern every week of how you make up the sleep. Because if it's sporadic and you're not really prepared for it, and it's 2 hours here and another hour there, then your body's just treating it as stress. Whereas if you know you're coming off 3 days and you might need an extra bit of sleep, your body knows what it's getting, you've it planned into your schedule, and it's less of a kind of an upset to the normal then.
Yeah, fair enough.
Does that answer that all right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's kind of what I thought anyway. And first, I just wanted to get it kind of clarified. It is just sleep, like, and just good recovery.
Yeah, pure sleep.
So you hear different views on this one, Tony, and I guess we try and build a lot of recovery into our training as much as possible, you know, in terms of easy days and whatever. But hard days hard, easy days easy, or else strength, you know, for the strength sessions, how do you fit it in with a sort of a 7 to 13 day a week, times a week endurance runners lifestyle?
I suppose you're right in saying the hard days hard, easy days easy. Another general, I don't know if you follow Stephen Seiler. That
would be your approach, is it, as well? Hard, so train on your hard sits. And typically, I don't know, it depends on the people here, but and there's more than endurance people here. There's a good few sprinters and co as well that have joined in, and Mike obviously. But like Tuesday, Friday would be our hard days. So you would say Tuesday, Friday after training or before? It can't be before training. They're the sessions, and the rest of them are fillers, if you want to put it that way.
You're talking about this, where do you put the strength sessions in?
Yeah, exactly. How to fit them into a week can be tricky, you know.
So if you're is it Tuesday, Friday, you said there, you're calling them your hot sessions, and you got to respect.
Typically, yeah, it could be, and you know, Sunday is a long run. That's also, you know, semi-hot.
Yeah, you'd probably be considering then that it's Wednesday, Saturday that the gym sessions are. So they're as far away from the hot sessions as you can. So if you're training, we'll say Tuesday evening, and you're doing your session, probably as early as you can Wednesday morning, so that you still have the rest of Wednesday, the Thursday, and then the Friday day until you do your next hot session.
Okay, yeah, so AM on the following day.
Yeah,
probably that makes sense. Yeah.
And if there's a recovery run on that morning anyway, there's a little bit of research from the point of view of concurrent training that if you're going to do a recovery run, like whether it's kind of 30, 40 minutes or whatever it is, that if you do the strength training after it rather than before it, you'll get more of the benefits of both. Whereas if you do your strength training before the recovery run, you'll only get the benefits of the recovery run. But you get more of the benefits of the recovery run, and it's a hormone release thing. If the cardiovascular hormones that are released from a short kind of burst of activity like that will cancel out any of the hormones that were produced from the strength training workout.
Domhnaill, would you say to always make sure then that you do your session on a day that you're running, or as opposed to on a rest day? There's only kind of one rest day a week, I think, maybe two.
I'd keep the rest day as a rest day. Otherwise, it'll accumulate over time.
An easy day,
yeah.
An easy run day.
Yeah, and I think it's different for different sports, because some sprinters will lift immediately before they sprint. But one of the key things I think to think about is if you find that any particular way that you're doing it is negatively affecting either your sessions or your progression in terms of times, then you got to rethink what's happening. Because I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to get better. And if there's an inkling that where you're putting your strength sessions or the amount of strength sessions that you're doing is interfering in that development as an athlete, then you got to kind of rethink. Either you're doing too much, you're doing the wrong stuff, or you're doing it at the wrong time. And some of that is completely individual. Like people who are working shift work, or the people who have problems with sleep, may not have to do as much training because they can't recover from it. Or the others who are kind of really, really on top of their sleep, their nutrition, their recovery, all that kind of stuff, can probably tolerate a little bit more. And I suppose for all you guys, when you're kind of looking at your own schedules, maybe having some form of diary or something like that alongside it, and even tweaking the different times of day that you do it, the different days during the week that you do it, and see what works best for you. It's ideal when there's a kind of a coach over a couple of athletes that everybody does the same thing on the same days. And in general, for your sessions, your kind of actual proper like running sessions, that'll be the case. But others might find that the strength can be done on different days and it doesn't really affect the whole thing. So trying to find where it works best in your own schedule.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to briefly go through this, but I suppose the argument I'm trying to make going through this stuff is that strength training for runners shouldn't look like strength training for rugby players or soccer players or GAA players or even some of the other kind of individual sports like swimming and all that. Steve Merland is probably the best mentor I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with. He was one of the original professional strength and conditioning coaches. He worked in the NHL. He did it, in his own words, he did everything wrong before he tried to do everything right. He started bodybuilding with hockey players, and if you've ever watched NHL, you know how explosive and you know how much they need to be able to move fast and to be agile. And he said he ruined a lot of good athletes before he realized that what he was doing was wrong and tried to find a better way of doing it. And he's probably kind of taught me the most over the last kind of decade from the point of view of how do athletes need to train for their sport. And I've highlighted all the different names here because he'd hate for me to be giving him credit for all the stuff that was said here. But I'm just going to read through these 10 rules for training with anyone. It's always about difference. Okay, so we've talked about that already. We can't just give two people the same program because it may not be good for one person. It only takes one bad session to injure somebody, and I suppose that's one thing that we need to be cognizant of. Number 2, we want bodies that are adaptable, not simply adapted. So we want you to be able to, if you need to kick at the end of a race, you need to have that in the arsenal. If you need to take a hard and long line outside to get around somebody, you got to be able to do that. If it's a windy day and you're running down the pit for a long jump, again, you got to be able to adapt to the environment. If you've just worked in perfect conditions and worked on the same technique in the same sessions over and over again, you're going to be adapted to those rather than being adaptable to competition. Athlete appropriate before sport specific is something that we've mentioned already. We don't just train for the sport, we train the athlete as a person themselves first, build them up to a certain level, and then we can look at what the sport demands from the point of view of specificity. We were looking at the shapes earlier. We don't just want to train the shape of running if somebody's got a really stiff lower back, or if somebody's got an ankle that has had several sprains before and needs a bit of balance work or a bit of strength work. Movement is gravity driven, which is the reason why I don't like doing any, certainly not a lot of movements done on the floor. Sean will probably attest to that. I think the only thing we did on the floor was the push-ups. Everything is up on your feet or hanging off something or jumping over something like that. We got to be working with our bodies, the ground and gravity, rather than just lying on the ground and asking muscles to do something. Brings us into the next one, train movements, not muscles. Okay, sport is not bodybuilding. Bodybuilders train muscles to get bigger. We train movements to create athletes. So whether it's skipping or jumping or squatting or throwing, we're looking at getting the movement done well rather than switch on your core, squeeze your glute, tense your abs, all that kind of stuff. Takes away from the actual performance of the movement. You'd never tell somebody to squeeze their abs when they're running down for a long jump, but you would tell them to run taller. You might tell them to drive their arms. You're not focusing on the muscle, you're focusing on the movement, and it should be the very same for how we prepare the body. Every muscle, bone, and joint in the body functions in 3 planes of motion simultaneously. That's a mouthful, but it just means that we need to make sure that we're looking at not just the up and down, forwards, backwards exercises. We're looking at lateral lunges, lateral bounds. We're looking at rotations. We got to make sure that even though some of you guys will be straight line machines, we need to make sure that if you have to step outside of that straight line, that you're not going to fall apart. Movement must be mindful rather than mindless. All right, so there's a lot of, you've probably noticed, mindless home workouts being shared on social media at the moment. Do 7,000 burpees in 20 seconds, all this kind of stuff. It takes the brain out of it. You just get the job done. There's sessions probably at times that you've done where you've just had to get the job done. Okay, you're talking about some of those harder interval sessions or some of the harder endurance sessions where you've got to hit a time and you do everything you can to do it. That's different. With regards to kind of athletic development and movement training, we got to make sure that you're connected to everything you're doing. If you're not paying attention, you're not going to learn. If you're not going to learn, you're not going to get stronger. You're not going to develop the coordination. And it's very important that we make sure that that stays as a constant throughout it. Simplicity yields complexity. This is getting very poetic now, but we like to look more so at simple movements done incredibly well than gimmicky movements done poorly. Training is cumulative. Progression is everything. So the endurance coaches will love this. You got to train to get better. You got to keep training to keep getting better. And if you're not progressing the training as the athlete is improving, then you're going to stagnate. And the sprint coaches will love this. Slow down. It's about process. So take your recovery. Make sure that you're engaged with every step, and make sure that if you're doing something, there's a process in mind. You're going somewhere. You're leading into something. It's not just an exercise for the sake of it. Okay. This one is one that I get relatively passionate about when talking to coaches, particularly endurance coaches. So sorry about that. You can't endure a quality you don't possess. So if you're not strong, you can't have good strength endurance. If you're not fast, you can't have good speed endurance. If you're not powerful, you can't have good power endurance. And there are some caveats to that. Some of the speed coaches will say, well, if you don't need to have max top end speed to be able to hold that speed throughout a race, and that's fine. But from the point of view of athletic development training, what we're looking at is developing the basic qualities first. Okay, the stuff that is not maybe that relevant to your sport, but is very relevant as a human. That the endurance comes from lots and lots of reps. Okay, so lots of reps at strength, lots of reps at speed, lots of reps at power. That's where the endurance will come from as well. All right. Again, this is secondary to your general training. This is not anything that would look to take over from endurance sessions or anything like that. The general maxim I use now, this is more so for kids and development athletes. Get them strong, get them fast, and then get them fit. All right. As we get older, it gets so much harder to get strong and fast. When you're going through the developmental period, whether it's from the age of 10 through to about 22, get as strong and as fast as you can in those years, and you've got everything else, all the rest of the time then to get fit and stay fit. Right, this is the stuff that I wanted to get onto, the more interesting stuff. So it was certainly interesting for me. Running, jumping, hopping, and skipping is essentially squatting, lunging, and bracing. Okay, so on the right-hand side here, Nadia is an overhead squat. She has a forward dumbbell lunge. And we were talking about bracing earlier, and I think this is a pretty nice picture. This is from, I think it's InterVarsity's, is that the relays last year?
The Maynooth, yeah, it's the relays, road relays in Maynooth, I think.
Perfect.
I recognize those trees, yeah.
So the brace we're talking about here, from the point of view of running, is the ability for her to plant that foot as hard as she can into the ground, and for this knee to not buckle in, for this hip to not drop, for these shoulders to not rotate too much. Now, if anybody knows Nadia as a runner, you know she doesn't run perfectly. We might get to that in a minute as well. But she's damn strong at being able to hold on to what she has. So she's a little bit of an overstrider. We haven't really touched on that yet because, as you might see here, she doesn't squat brilliantly yet. And that's about 4 months ago, but she doesn't do that brilliantly yet. So for us to be focusing too much on the nitty-gritty details of her running mechanics before she can do all the basics well, that would be a little bit of a mistake. All right. One other thing to think about, and this might be relevant to some of you, some of the best kind of upper ends of the sprints and going into the middle distance and longer distance runners have incredibly long bones in their legs. I don't know if you've ever noticed this about her, but the length of her femur and her tibia makes it very, very hard for her to squat down low. So I need to be very, very cognizant of that if she's not built to squat and squat very heavy or squat very well, then for me to just keep hammering away at that is probably going to be a mistake. Okay? So when I'm getting Nadia to squat and lunge and brace in the gym, it's looking to improve this picture without really talking about this picture. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it's very general work aiming to cross over into what she needs. So I am going to try and go through a couple of videos here. Now, sometimes when I'm sharing videos, they'll come up a bit jumpy. So if they are, I apologize. Just to give an example of some of her training that she was doing, we only started working together in September. All right. So some of the training that she would have been doing at the start would have been some very, very basic work to try and build up some general patterns of movement. That's the loading there. That video coming out okay?
Yeah, we can see it, yeah. I think there's some setting I'll try and look for to make the video smoother.
Okay. Looking fancy there. All right, it's not running with weight overhead or anything like that. It's saying all we're trying to do is trying to make sure that she is strong as a person, first of all. Okay, what else can we look at? We're going to go through the general stuff and then we're going to go through some of the more specific stuff. So this is the kind of thing that she'll enjoy more. Every athlete wants to power clean, everybody wants to hang clean. And we've been focusing for months and months and months on how to do this well. All right. She is about 55 kilos. So we don't ever want to load it up very high, but we do want it to be snappy. We do want her to be able to brace well when she catches it. We do want her to be able to tolerate the loading and do the movement well as well. I'm going to find, if I can, a couple more. Again, general strength looks nothing like running. It's building up some qualities that are relevant for running, but it looks nothing like it. They're all different shapes. Right. So trying to move fast, trying to move with intent. This one looks a little bit more like running, I suppose. I'm not just showing off videos here now, I'm trying to make a point. But I can't find the video I'm looking for. Maybe this is it. So Sean will recognize this as a leg circuit. This is probably the key part of Nadia's training as a runner from the point of view of tolerating that burn that you get towards the end of a middle distance race. So this is I think it's a mini leg circuit, but I'm going to explain it in a second. 6, 7, 8, 9. Half leg circuit. Oh, shit. Sorry, excuse my language. Missed the end of that. 4. I'll find a better one here now. Any questions while I'm looking for this?
Mike, any questions? Take on Mike.
Is most of what you would do resistance training in the gym like that, like a workout like that for legs? Is that like, I mean, you don't necessarily have to use weights all the time?
No, absolutely not. The majority of what we'll do, we might do 2 or 3, maybe resistance exercises. The rest of it will be body weight. Yeah. And we'll have some core and upper body stuff in there.
And you're trying to stay in that burn sector. So like would you say the longer you can stay with that burn, the better? Or would you try and ease off, like when you get to a peak and then like take a break for a while being like maybe like, you know, you take a recovery time for like a minute or have 30 seconds or something and then go back into that? Or would you try and sustain the burn for as long as you can?
This is for the leg circuit you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay. I'll talk about it while I'm looking for it still. The leg circuit was the kind of brainchild of Vern Gambetta as well. And the full one takes about 6 minutes to do. I don't think we've gotten there yet, Sean. But the 6 minutes worth of the leg circuit has 100 squats, 100 lunges, 100 step-ups, and 50 squat jumps, which is a lot of work. I can't find that video now. But essentially what you're looking to do is you're looking to start off with what is a mini leg circuit, which is 6 squats, 6 lunges, 6 step-ups, 3 squat jumps. You take a minute rest between sets. You do 3 sets of that to build up all the way to doing 5 full leg circuits without any recovery, which is 20 squats, 20 lunges, 20 step-ups, 10 squat jumps, no recovery, go straight through in 5 sets. And if you're talking about milers, you're talking about guys that need to tolerate a really, really heavy lactate burn. It's combining the two things. It's not having the impact of running, but it certainly is looking at the kind of cardiovascular element of it and getting both in the one session. You're asking as well about the resistance training being all legs. I think we had a video here of the pull-ups. I'm struggling to find those. But no, like we look at it from the point of view of upper body, she's still a person. She still needs to be able to do basic things. She can do 10 pull-ups unbroken. She can do about 25 push-ups unbroken. We don't really go any more complex than that. But I suppose the key thing we're looking at from the point of view of upper body is she strong enough, and does she need to be any stronger? And if she doesn't, then why would we bother pushing it out?
Yeah, you don't want it to be top heavy or anything.
Yeah, and there is a kind of, I suppose, body composition element to it. And middle distance runners and endurance runners are particularly, I can't find that video now, sorry about that, particularly conscious about it. What I suppose we're looking for on upper body work is it's the linkage between the upper body and the lower body when we're running. If we're strong enough and we've developed enough strength through our hips and through our shoulders, we don't necessarily need to spend an inordinate amount of time on core work because we're linking the two of them so much anyway. And if we can get, if we're looking for running efficiency and running economy as the ultimate goal of strength training for runners, particularly in endurance-based runners, then the less cost for each step is what gives us a better VO2 max, better lactate threshold. If with every step we're using less energy and there's less energy cost, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Any other questions on that?
This isn't maybe a slightly uninformed one, but So you're going for high reps and low load pretty much in some cases. Is that right, Tony? Depending on what the outcome you're looking for, I suppose.
In the body weight stuff, yes. But at the end of the day, she's a 22-year-old girl. She's still technically a development athlete. We are looking to continue to top up her general strength as well. So for the likes of the trap bar deadlifts and the barbell squats, what we will look for more positions whereby she can be put under a high level of stress for lower reps. So she'll be looking at kind of 3 to 6 reps, maybe 4 or 5 sets with a ton of recovery. And that's just kind of general preparation. And yeah, we'll do more of that kind of in her off season, pre-season, and kind of between competition phases. But it's kind of a general theme throughout. We don't want her to lose any strength going into her competition phases. So it may come down to 1 or 2 sets, and that's it. But that'll only be 2 or 3 exercises in each workout, and it'll only be 2 workouts per week.
Tony, do you have any thoughts on, say like jumpers or the 100 up to 400 meter runners? Any thoughts on, say, like that 6-minute burn workout is probably more about kind of endurance?
Yeah.
Is there equivalence for the power athletes? Say?
There is. Now, I suppose what we're looking at is the sprinters and the jumpers will probably get the majority of their intense strength training in the actual sport itself. So it'll be more so about how do we tailor the reps and the sets of their sprint workouts and their jumps to be able to get them to a point whereby that's their strength. That they have circuits in between that, they've warm-ups done appropriately. But when we look at full plate data from sprinting and jumping, you can't replicate that in the gym. You can replicate the stuff that comes from the more from 800 up, but when you're looking at a 100-meter sprinter and the force they're putting through the ground with each step, you can't replicate that in the gym. And it's about having appropriate intensity and volume in their actual sessions, I suppose. Now, they will do slower development lifts like their squatting and their lunging and their step-ups and all that kind of stuff to make sure that there's good joint integrity and good tissue integrity. But the emphasis on that stuff would be less about performance and more about kind of just keeping them healthy.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like sprinters are that if you do too much with them, you're just blunting the axe, I suppose, really, aren't you?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good.
I found that video if you're still interested, just to give you an idea on what we're looking at from that, because it's probably the cornerstone circuit that I do with most runners. This was a couple of months ago, 2, 3, 4. So that was I think it was a mini leg circuit. And I suppose what we want to look at with Nadia here is the strength stuff is done well through full range of motion. And then when she goes to the plyometric part of it, that it's snappy, it's rhythmical, it's controlled, and that she's able to express max power as she goes through that. So that's a mini leg circuit. So the length of time on that, Michael, just to answer your question, is about 24 seconds if you're doing it well. So you're talking the majority of your 200s, good 200s are going to be doing something like that, trying to express as much power in that space of time as you can. If it was a case that it's a 200-meter runner, maybe you might even do it with some of the 100-meter runners, or if they're doing both. If they're injured, if they can't tolerate too much reps on the track, it's a nice little one to be able to do with them, to be able to replicate some of the more kind of anaerobic demand of it rather than just the impact demand.
Right, yeah, good.
So that's great. Anyone else, any questions for Donnie?
Just regarding load, so say you're monitoring like weekly load, I suppose like from an endurance point of view, you'd kind of look at your heart rate and that sort of thing, but I don't know, like the likes of RPE or that sort of thing, say if you were mixing like that, your distance sessions, your strength sessions, say if you had a hard I don't know, say I work full time now, so say about a stressful week at work, is there anything you kind of use, say, to monitor on a kind of a longer term basis, like a weekly basis or a monthly basis, to, you know, keep a track of that, just like that if you were to pick up some sort of a tendon injury and you could kind of relay it back to load? Anything kind of objective?
I think like I tend to work one-on-one with most of the people that I work with. So say I'm referring to Nadia because I'm working with her now, but she doesn't train in the gym. Well, she does now because we're all locked down, but she doesn't train in the gym without me. So she has me twice a week. She has her coach Enda 5 times a week. In a situation like that, you're kind of relying on how you feel. Are you comfortable enough to say that to the coach? And is the coach taking care enough of the situation to be able to alter your session or alter the plan session for you? The RPE stuff is good because it's subjective. Like just measuring miles or just measuring distances or heart rate can be quite objective, and it might not take account of what you're talking about there, the stressful nature of work or the fatiguing nature of that. So I suppose that's where the kind of really good, honest training diaries come in, that you feel comfortable enough to say that you feel like crap, and then you feel confident enough to be able to say that to your coach. I do not feel 100% today. I'm going to train. I might step out. Little things like that. But I think from the point of view of reducing the injury rates with that and kind of nipping things in the bud, it's about knowing your own body and knowing what you need to do on any given day, rather than saying, oh, I ran 45 miles this week. If I run another mile, I might get hurt, or if I do another session, I might get hurt. If you feel good, train. If you don't feel good, take the foot off the pedal. Kind of comes back to that hard days hard and easy days easy that Mark was talking about earlier. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it's quite individual, I suppose. And the key thing is the kind of coach-athlete relationship. Are you both well invested? Is the communication good enough that if you tell somebody that you are wrecked, that they actually take account of that after?
Perfect. Yeah, I suppose just to see if you thought there was merit in the RP scale. I find it quite good, but
there is, to give an example now, we'll say Nadia had a bit of a niggle in the back of her knee because she'd been doing a lot of sessions on grass recently. So we've decided to take out a gym session, drop the volume on the gym sessions, and keep all of those sessions at an RPE below 7.
Okay.
So we're using that at the moment to make sure that we're not training too hard in the gym, so that she can use her kind of recovery faculties on the running sessions. We wouldn't always do it, but in this case, we're just trying to nip something in the bud. So I suppose that probably does answer your question. That yeah. Looking at the intensity of particular sessions, and in those ones, it's probably the less important sessions you want to be looking at the RPEs on, rather than the hot sessions or the proper kind of bang for your buck ones.
Make sure your easy days are properly easy, and that you're not flogging yourself there, I guess. So did you say two gym sessions a week is kind of what you're usually typically?
It is very, very dependent. We had been doing 3 with, we'll say, a couple of the other athletes I work with. They're a little bit older. They have been banged up over the years. I'll only do 2. For development athletes doing, we'll say, from the ages of 12 up, you'd be looking at 3 a week, at least 3 a week. And some of that might be part of their warm-up, where they're working on squat movement, lunge movement, they're working on core throughout their warm-ups. But yeah, at least 3 with development, 2 with somebody who's training full-time. If they need a third one, if they're that type of athlete, yes. Or if somebody's been banged up over the years, they have a long injury history, then doing 3 gym sessions might be just too much load, too much fatigue, and they miss out on what they would be getting from the runs or the throws with the jumps or whatever.
Okay.
In my opinion, I'll just put that on at the end.
And not forgetting the word. So exactly, we have to fit it in with the other stuff. But I think that sounds good. And anyway, what do you think of, like, we use Nike Training Club and things like that quite a bit. I know it's the general kind of thing, but we'd use it to say, you've got 15 minutes, you need to use them, don't want to think. What's your thoughts on that kind of approach?
It really depends on
It's the mind, back to the mindless versus mindful, right?
It is a little bit, but I'm cognizant now that you're using it, so I don't want to insult everybody.
I use it the odd time anyway.
It comes down to whether somebody's been coached how to do the movements properly or not. There's not really a bad session on paper. It's just whether or not somebody can do that session or not.
Okay.
So I suppose with the things like the Nike Training Club, or even like some of the online workouts that you're seeing now, there's absolutely no problem if the goal is apparent. So if there's an actual goal there, and there are some really good people designing those Nike workouts, on the Nike Training Club things. So if the goal is apparent, so you can see that this is a core endurance session, or you can see this is a strength session, or you can see this is a speed session, or whatever, then the only difference is whether somebody's able for it or not. And I suppose it's highlighting your athletes that you think might struggle with it, and maybe giving them an alternative. Like the majority of people will tolerate that stuff, no problem, because if somebody gets badly injured and they've been using Nike's app and they decide to sue Nike, then I don't think those sessions can't be too difficult or too hard or too off the wall for that reason. But I suppose knowing who might struggle and being able to reach out to them and say, maybe take it easy on X, Y, or Z.
All right. That sounds good to me. Anything else, anyone? We have a bunch of triathletes here as well, but anything from the triathletes in particular? You probably get all this all the time with Triathlete Ireland and whatnot. No? Nothing? Okay.
I'm worrying because they can't get back on the turbo trainer.
Yeah, they're probably on it now. You just can't see their leg. If you can't see their legs, they're pedaling. That's the rule with triathletes. Okay, that's great. Thanks a million, Tony. You need to make me a host.
How do I do that?
I don't know. Find the nameless participants and click on me and say make host.
Thanks for that, Tony.
Mark Davis.
Oh, yeah. Anyone else want to be a host while we're at it? No.
I think you can only do it to one person. Because when I met, you're not. Okay. Yeah. Thanks a million for that.
Tony, that was superb. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks a million.
I will leave you to your training planning then.
Yeah, it's going to be very brief. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Brilliant stuff.
See you, Tony. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
We'll talk to you in person soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Great. So we'll just share.
Okay. I'm going to drop.
That's fine, Mike. We're pretty much done anyway. Only
Thanks
a couple of minutes. No problem.
Thanks
That was
for letting us know about it.
It was different anyway. It was interesting. It was kind of more the principles than the practice in some ways, but the principles are the bits you'll remember. I actually liked his arrow diagram of the walk, crawl, brace, etc. Pointing to the other one. Go on.
I think it's always good getting different views on how to do things. Anyways, and you always take away something from it. I don't know if my group will be doing that 6-minute burn workout.
You never know.
I'll just jump in here.
We do 12 minutes.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. It's Owen. I would run. I have a group I run with in Dublin. A lot of them will be trained by Tony, and I suppose what it does is it gives a balance to what endurance athletes normally do, which is around movement, strength, and and they would all talk about their ability to be able to move and train better, having done this work. And a lot of them are in their late 20s, early 30s, and regret not doing it earlier.
No, I'm absolutely certain that it makes a huge difference, and I think that should be one of the focuses on the next, our next block. Let's try and use some of this, and get stronger on it. So you're working out which, go on.
Yeah, I suppose the context, the concept, there was the two triangles, but it was really get strong, get fit. Get strong, get fast, get fit.
I think one of the points around kind of the other, preventing injuries in other situations as well, like the lateral movements and stuff like that, because we don't do a whole lot of that. And I remember Jen Ann Healy commenting on it before that, because some some of the athletes would also play soccer then, but most of the training was athletics. And she was saying it's kind of injury risk because there's a lot of lateral movement in soccer that you're not getting much training for then.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the main things we want out of this sport is that, like, when your guys are my age, I don't want you walking down the stairs and blaming me for it. So
Mark doesn't want you breaking his PBs when you're his age.
well, do you know what? They don't have to wait, because I'm just going to share one of the things from today there. Just in one of the time trials, we got a new PB, which is pretty good to do on a time trial.
Wow,
So
8:57.
welcome to the sub-9 club there, William, and tell me what it's
brilliant.
like.
Brilliant.
Fair play to you. That was a fabulous run.
Super.
So, but
Lovely weather for it as well. Yeah.
How did you feel after?
over the moon, I'd say. All right. So we'll mooch on.
Was running uphill hard, William? Was running uphill all that way hard?
It looks like it's downhill on the thing, but it's actually not. It's up and I want to clarify that.
That's a great run. Well done. That's super on your own on not a great surface.
After a day's farming.
Yeah.
Jobs all day. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to drop, Mark. I'll leave you to your planning. Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
Okay, Mike. Thanks.
Cheers,
Bye,
Mike. Anyone else as well? Welcome to stay on or leave it. We'll only be a couple of minutes. And that was good. So we just want to kind of maybe just do a quick look at the next block. Next 3, as you know, we're training 4 weeks at a time, 3 kind of build weeks and a kind of an easy week. Well, the next one's going to be a little bit different. And this is the reason it's a long season. So we're kind of here. We've just done training through March, Corona, zombie plague, April. We're working through May. It's, early May. And it's a long way to go till we get to the very first, you could argue, Castlegar XC. Maybe no XC is going to happen, let's be honest, but I think it will. I think it's going to come back quicker than we think it will, unlike the Leaving Cert. So it's a long time to go here. So and obviously yourselves whether your target is the even or the uneven, but generally what we're thinking of doing is, so like we say, we have 2 blocks ticked, these ones up the top if they make sense. That's where we are now. And we have this 3rd block about to start. That gets us to like the beginning of June. These blocks were quickly drawn on the side here while Donnie was talking. So I don't have, they're not lined up. But so we're going to go through block 3, and then we have this little gap. Because if we keep charging on, training, building, come the start of the XC, we'll be kind of mentally burnt out. We might be bloody fit, but we'll be kind of mentally burnt out. So I think the plan is that we're going to take a super rest, okay, kind of an easy break for 2 weeks. And then we'll start building again. What we've been doing at the moment is kind of we did two blocks of general prep, and this is kind of a transition block coming up. So general prep is where we've the volume, and we're going to use the strength, which is the kind of stuff Donnie was talking about. So we built up to a certain level over these 2 blocks. We're actually going to go more on the volume over the summer. So that's, if we feel good, we'll train, like we say. So obviously some people here are at different stages. Oshin had a calf problem the last week or 2. Ross his leg is just growing back slowly, but he's back on the road anyway, so that's good. But
Leaving Cert guys are.
And the Leaving Cert guys, now they're free, right?
Yeah.
So, and partying too, judging by the shades on Paddy there at the start of the meeting there, he was trying to hide the eyes. So I guess that's at the high level, what we're thinking is general prep is we build it up. Transition is we're more into the kind of the CV, more of the CV stuff. General prep will be the tempo, strength stuff, kind of give ourselves a good foundation, a higher volume base than we had, more this CV, and then and hills in here too in this transition. And then a specific will be lower volume, more faster stuff, kind of to tune us for these races. There'll be races coming anyway, but that's just at a super broad sweep. Does that make sense to guys here on at a super high level?
A nice proper 2-week break, as Mark was saying, that you can rest, you can just do easy running or just completely take a break.
Yeah, exactly. So the next 3 weeks,
Sorry,
we're going
Mark,
to do.
just a stupid question. Is there any, like, the expectation is the track season is gone? Is that right? Or it won't
So
get,
I've heard
it won't
rumors.
get pushed into the end of August or anything like that?
Who knows? Listen, we'll make a plan, and the plan might change.
Yeah.
But I think, it's just good. You don't want to get too tied up in these plans and just have them in the back of your head or whatever. I've heard a rumor from a fairly decent source that we could have senior outdoor track in September,
Right.
but I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good source.
Yeah, smiling away. So, well, Chinese whisper kind of thing. So I pass it on. I never pass on rumors. So there you go. Just don't pass it on. So I doubt it's going to happen, but there might be something in September. But for us, I don't see it. But I think it's unlikely.
On AAI, isn't there a roadmap for coming back with some dates, some potential dates?
Is there? That's new. Let's take a look at that.
Oh, and just in the last day or two, they released some. It's really wordy, to be honest. There's nothing.
Well, there's nothing concrete in it.
No, it's just a
all right. All right, Grant. So mine is kind of wordy in the same way, but we'll just assume we're going to go business as usual. But we'll see. We'll come back. We'll see. We're not disappearing. We'll come back and we'll reassess. But whatever happens, if we follow on this process of another building block, a little bit of recovery, we've done some really nice training. It's over the last while, I think anybody who has been able to train, we'll have another block of a little bit of recover, heal up any little aches and niggles, get our heads back into it, and then go again. It's all golden. We're layering one layer on top of another, and it's gonna work for us. So no harm, like you said, first do no harm, and that's the thing. So the next 3 weeks, you have your plans. We'll go through. We'll send out the texts every week as usual. So there's a little bit of mileage progression. It's a little bit more mileage than the previous one, but not much, like a couple of K a week more. The workouts, the big change is now we've got this new radius, like 5 kilometers. So we're going to try and find a hill within our 5 kilometer range, some kind of hill somewhere. Even William on his flat 2K course, 3K course can find something. And so we're going to do that as one of the workouts of the week. And the other workout is going to be a CV or tempo as usual. And some of these hill workouts might be mixed. So we might have a little bit of tempo, then some hills. And I'm going to I'll send on the slides after on, so you don't need to take the pictures or whatever. But what we'll do as well is, my head's gone. It's gone. Oh yeah. I was busy at work, and Elisa busy or whatever, so we didn't send out the survey yet, but I'll send out the survey after, and just let me know whatever way how long the hill is near you. And so the hill session will be according to the hill that's near you. It doesn't have to be super long. It can be a drag. It doesn't have to be super steep. If you find you live somewhere really flat but there's a humpback bridge nearby, we can do 15-second hills. If you've got something a drag, we can do 60-second. And we can do some kind of compound sessions, like, for example, 8 short hills, bit of tempo, another 8 short hills. There's loads of little kind of ways we can mix it up and have fun with that stuff. On the S&C, this 3 weeks as well, we'll try and do Donny stuff. Now, a couple of things I got out of Donny's is I'm a very routine-oriented guy. I don't know about you guys, in that I like my days of the week to do stuff. So what I'm going to do is Saturday morning and Wednesday morning. Now, Wednesday morning will be tough, right? But I'm going to try Saturday morning and see if I can get a workout, or else maybe I'll do Wednesday at lunchtime and go for my run Wednesday evening. So because they're the 2 days after the workout. So that's one way I'm thinking of incorporating Donny's stuff. Yeah. Any questions on that stuff?
It's interesting the length of break, isn't it? Well,
on the which?
The break, the recovery break after strength and conditioning, a little bit different to what we've been doing.
Yeah, I suppose it's just there's a practicality too. If you've done an hour and a half or more between your session and everything, it's very hard to launch into unless you're a full-time athlete to launch into S&C. So I'd say it's a bit of that. Now the other thing is this super break. What's that going to be? It's going to be, unfortunately, it doesn't mean just go cut loose for 2 weeks. It could. It's up to yourselves, but you'll lose stuff. Anyone who listened to, so Owen, this might look familiar to you. This workout, a summer break plan is Tin Man's summer break plan, right? So I have the T-shirt there somewhere. Tom Schwartz, the coach. So basically, he reckons after 5 days, you start to lose some of that aerobic base that we've gained already. So we're going to but we do need those 5 days fully off from running. You can still do fun stuff. Go out, walk the dogs. Hike, swim, whatever if you're not scared of water, walking, cycling. Whatever you need to do, but just keep it light. And we'll talk more about this when it comes to the time. And then for the next 9 days of the 14 days, we'll just run every second day an easy run, and then we'll get back into it. So that'll be enough to sort of recap the mind, and we won't have lost. Your man, Tin Man, always gives percentages. You'll have lost a percentage, but I think it's like you'll maintain 96.4% or something like that. That's the way he kind of operates. So anyway, and the reason is, we don't want to keep building. It all makes sense to everyone, doesn't it? It's just something to look forward to. We'll have that break and we'll charge on. So that's it. I don't have any more slides on the, the plans, the kind of style that's going. And so everybody else, okay. Ross, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm fine now. Yeah, fully recovered.
You're back doing a bit. Hopefully not going at it too hard. So yeah. Any questions from anyone else or anything? Are you happy enough? Ready to go, Sarah?
When are the training sessions going to be back on?
We don't know.
That's something that's going to happen as soon as we can get back up there. We will, Anthony. So I'll keep you posted.
Smaller groups. It'll start off with smaller groups, possibly. 4 of you theoretically can run together now.
Yeah, you can kind of run together now. Go for bike rides and stuff like that. Yeah, but I think the way the government have it phased out after. So there's 2 problems. One is, they say we know that they have their phases lined out, and I think in phase 2 we can go back and do group training sessions, like what they call phase 2. We're in phase 1 now, but phase 2 is meant to be like team sports that are non-contact. That's us. You can go back train together. But the other side of it is Athletics Ireland have cancelled our insurance up at the track. So even though you guys are AAI members and we're insured, we're technically not insured there now. So the club as a whole will take its leadership from Athletic Ireland. Like, they're not going to let us down to coach really large groups or whatever until AAI say it's okay and you're insured. That's the problem.
That's not on a week by week basis, really. Everything changes very quickly, doesn't it?
Don't worry, I'll be the first person up there once it's open, so and you know all about it. We'll be, yeah. All right, guys. Paul, how's the leg?
Yeah, it's good. It's
getting there.
I'm allowed to go out for a walk 1K, run 1K, walk 1K. So
that's how it starts.
It's been kind of hard, but I'm allowed to go on the bike now as much as I can. So I've been doing that instead.
Well, we need walkers for the National League anyway, so that's good. Keep it up.
Yeah, I tried that. I tried the technique. I had
easy points
in my head, and I thought, okay, no, not yet.
No, you're too good a runner to be able to walk. You'd find it really hard, I think.
Don't want to walk.
All right.
Yeah, it's good though. It's recovering well.
All right, super. So will we leave it at that, guys? I'll send you out recording slides and whatnot, unless anybody has anything else they want to talk about. Or well done again, William, and everyone else that did their time trials today. Sure, ping us on in the survey what you got, and it's 100% private, just so we can look at the paces for the next week. I've been too lenient on William there, but most of the rest of you, I think we've been right. So it's not too bad.
Well done. Thanks for coming, guys.
All right. Cheers, guys. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good to see you again.
Bye. See ya.
See you guys. Yeah.
Right, that's it.
You're still on speaker there, William, just in case you start giving out about me.